Okay, now we'll get started with session 6.2 of tutorial 2, in which we will be going over forms and design views. We'll be planning and designing a custom form. And during this session, we'll be creating a custom form based on what our customers request for, where here in figure 6-17, they show that it was designed on paper and then it's transformed into our access. So throughout the steps, we'll be creating this. You can see we got a little bit of work ahead of us, but we will be doing it in a custom fashion. So we'll be doing that in design view. Let's go ahead and jump in there now to look at our steps. Based on the steps here, let's go ahead and create our blank form using our design view to get our form started so we can create that one that our customer would like customized. If you don't already have it open, let's click the Create tab here. And then next we were going to go into the blank form button here on our forms group. Go ahead and click that blank form button. Let's go ahead and close our navigation pane. And let's make sure that we are in design view. And that will complete those first few steps of just getting us a blank form that we can work with in our design view. Let's just make a quick note of some of the features here in our blank form that we've got designed started, at least here in design view. Notice that we have rulers that we can work with. Gives us a kind of spatial distance to be able to lay out what is needed in our forms. Here in our detail section. Also here to the right we have our field list pane. Obviously there's nothing there yet, but as we're working you'll see that get populated, and we can show what tables we want to work with here. We've kind of seen this before, but now that we've got our tools together, we'll go ahead and start creating our custom form. To do that, we're going to add some fields to our form, and we're going to start by adding bound controls from our visit table to our grid here. And to get that completed, here are the steps we're going to use to perform that action. And the name that we will be assigning it is here. So let's go ahead and jump back in and get that started. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and click that to show what tables we have to work with. Let's go ahead and double click Visit ID here in the field list pane. Good. Go ahead and double click that. Instantly you'll notice that we have a label box and a text box that have been created for Visit ID. Now you'll notice that the Access has created this bound control in our detail section. So if we move this one, that one, the label box will move with it as well. So that's why this is a bound control. Now if you go back over here to our field list pane, you'll notice that Access also placed the table visit, or the visit table, in the fields available for this view section, and in the next section down it put in the fields list pane here, fields available in the related tables, it shows those. So now we know what all is available after completing and getting our control installed there. Let's go ahead and repeat that step and add our visit date, patient ID, reason, comments, and walk-in fields, and go ahead and do them in that order. So let's go ahead and do the first one, visit date. Next is our patient ID. We'll just double click that. Reason. We'll do our comments next, and now we'll come back and finish up with our walk-in fields. What we end up with after completing those is we have 6 bound controls, one for each of the 6 fields that are listed there in the field list pane, and they've all been added to the detail section of the form. And just to make sure that what you created is what the book wanted, go ahead and refer to figure 6-19 in your e-text to see that you've created it exactly as I have here. Let's go ahead and click the Save button now. And we're going to save our form as Form Visits and Invoices. Go ahead and press the Enter key after you've typed that in. And now you'll notice that the tab for the form now displays that form name that we just created, and the form design is saved in our clinic database here. Now that we've added our fields that we need to work with here to our grid, we're going to go ahead and close the field list pane. So click the Design tab. Then let's go down to the Tools group, and let's select Add Existing Fields button, and that will close our Field Panes property. Now that we have closed our field list pane, we're going to move into the next section here of our session 6.2, which will cover selecting, moving, and aligning controls. So we're going to go ahead and first we're going to start with selecting a walk-in bound control. Alright, before we get into creating our walk-in bound control here, I just want to make a quick note that when you work in Design View, controls you place in the form don't become part of a control layout. So instead you can individually select, move, resize, and manipulate one control without also changing the other controls. However, anytime you can select a group of controls, just like we did before, you can place them in a control layout. And that control layout can either be a stacked layout or a tabular layout. So I just wanted to make a quick note of that before we move on. So let's go ahead and create our walk-in bound control. Here, as we're selecting our walk-in bound control, notice as you have a control selected here, we have different handles that are part of this. You'll notice that the sizing handles here allow you to change the size. Go ahead and take that back to what it was. And then we also have move handles that allow you to, you've got it, move the item around. And we'll go ahead and take that back to the default. Now to continue working with our walk-in bound control here, we're going to go ahead and move our walk-in bound control. So let's go ahead and grab the move handles on that, and we will place it in another portion of our grid. Let's go ahead and drag this control to the upper right area, and then we're going to release the mouse button, and we're going to kind of compare that with the one that is in figure 6-21. So we'll go ahead and try to move that now. You'll notice the little black box to the left. I'm kind of using that on the ruler there to make sure that my alignment is good with my visit ID control there. Alright, you see that we've got this moved up here, so it pretty much looks like figure 6-21. So if you had some problems moving them up there, remember you can always click control in case they're not bound together and click on both boxes to treat them as one unit. Now that we kind of rough guessed this, let's go ahead and make sure that we select all these controls here. Let's grab the visit ID label box, and our walk-in and walk-in checkbox. Now we have those, let's go and let's try to align those. After holding the shift key down to select all those, I'm just going to pick a box and I'm going to right click on it. And we're going to go down, point to align on our shortcut menu. Then we're going to click top. I didn't see a lot of movement in mine, which means I did a really good job of just kind of eyeing it out there. But the four selected controls should now be aligned on their top edges, such as seen in figure 6-22 in your e-text. Let's go ahead and save our form design changes, and then we're going to switch to form view, which should look similar to figure 6-23. Go ahead and click on form view, and it looks like we did a great job. So if yours looks this way, good job. Now let's go to the next session or section of this session and look at resizing and deleting controls. Now here are the steps that we're going to use to begin deleting. We're going to delete the patient ID bound control. Then we're going to resize the reason text box, which is right now it's too narrow and it's too short to display our reason field values. Then we're going to resize the visit ID and visit date text boxes to reduce their widths. So the steps for doing this are all listed here, 334 and 335. Let's get back into our database and perform these necessary steps. Alright, since we know we're working in design view, let's switch back to our design view. Right now we want to deselect what controls are being all grouped together, and instead we're going to select the patient ID. We're going to right click on this text box here, and we are going to select delete, and the label and text box for patient ID bound control should be deleted. So let's go ahead and select delete, and you'll notice that both of those did in fact remove from our grid. Now let's click the reason text box so we can select that. And we're going to go ahead and put our pointer on the middle right handle of the reason text box, and we're going to drag it to where it is approximately the same width as our comments text box. So let's go ahead and do that now. Click on that, drag it over, and that looks pretty good right there. And just kind of compare that with figure 6-24, but it should look like they are aligned. Now that we've resized our reason text box, let's switch back to our layout view. Once we're in our layout view, let's click on the visit ID, which is already selected for us, which is great. And then we're going to hold the shift key down and click on the visit date text box there, so that they are both selected. Now let's go ahead and drag the right side of this to the left to try to make it look a little bit better, just slightly wider than the field value that it contains. Click that, drag it over a little bit. That looks pretty good. Once again, if we go too far, we'll see that we have a bunch of number signs. So just make adjustments. That looks pretty good. Now let's just make sure that we have the correct width. Let's just navigate through a couple of our records. And you can tell right away that we did not, so let's go ahead and select those again. And because we added one more character here, going from 11/9/2015 to 11/10, that's why we need more space. And it looks like we've got everything sized correctly. Let's go ahead and go back to the first record. Now that we know we've made the right changes, let's go ahead and save. And we will go back into our design view. Now you'll notice that none of our controls are selected because there are no orange boxes around any of our controls. So that's good, and that's where we want to start working from. As we move on now to the next session, or section of the session, which is adding a combo box to our form. So let's go ahead and look at the steps for that now. As I mentioned, we'll be working with a combo box. So just to recall, our combo box is a control that provides the features of a text box and a list box. You can choose a value from the list or type an entry. And here are the steps that we're going to be performing Your e-text, you'll be starting on 336, and it continues into 337 there. So we'll jump back into our database and click on our Design tab. And once we've got our Design tab open, we're going to go into the Controls group and click the More button. You can see there's the More button. Go ahead and click that. Go ahead and select the Use Control Wizards. Now go back in and click More button again. Now that we're back in that, we've verified that our user control wizards are available. Let's go ahead and go over and check or click on the combo box, and our controls gallery should close. Now that we've selected our combo box, nothing really happens until we create a position for it. So let's go ahead and look at that, and we're going to position our cross portion to the pointer below the walk-in bound control and around the 4-inch mark on our horizontal ruler. Let's go ahead and place that now. You can see that our combo box is represented with an icon here. Let's just go ahead and place it there. And we're going to want to go ahead and click the I want the combo box to get the values from another table or query option. Click the next button here. Let's go ahead and switch to queries. And the query we're going to want to select is the patients by name query. There we have it selected now. Let's go ahead and click the next button. Now this ought to look awful familiar. We've worked with this before, so now we're going to go ahead and use this dialog box to let us select the fields from the query to appear as columns in the combo box. Go ahead and double click patient, and we're going to go ahead and select patient ID as well. Then go ahead and click the next button. And we're going to choose a sort order for our combo box entries. And based on what our customer says, they want the entries to appear in an ascending order. So let's go ahead and select that. And we're going to use our drop down here to select patient. So let's go ahead and select that now. Go ahead and click the next button now that we've selected which field we want to be ascending. Now you'll notice that we have our combo box wizard dialog box open. Let's go ahead and resize the columns a little bit wider than the widest data because the form font is a bit larger than the wizard font. Scrolling down the columns to make sure all of our values are present and resizing again, if not, will help us make sure that we've done it right the first time. So let's go ahead and just look down through here, and you can see right away that we need to do some widening. And a little bit more. And this one here, you know, if you didn't change it to put your name in, which typically you want to do that right away, that's why that one needs to be widened so much, because we haven't changed that field yet. But it looks like now we have everything looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and click the next button here. Now we are going to go ahead and select our foreign key. Go ahead and select patient ID, click next. From here, let's go ahead and select store the value in this field, drop this down. We're going to select patient ID, and then we're going to click next. Now we're going to go ahead and put the label that we want to be shown for our combo box, and for that we are going to type in patient ID. Once you've got that put in, let's go ahead and hit finish, and we will see that the completed patient ID combo box now appears on our form. And you'll see it's there. If you want to go ahead and move it around, you could, But we're going to go ahead and do that now. But if you just want to play around with moving your controls some more, you can. But for now, let's just go ahead and leave it as it is and move on to our next part, which is to set a caption property value for our patient ID label. And you can see those steps here and then on the following. So we'll go back to our database and complete that. Let's go ahead and right click on our patient ID box here. And we are going to select properties, which is all the way at the bottom. Once you select properties, you'll see that your property sheet appears on the right side of your work area for your grid. So let's go ahead and look there now. Let's go ahead and put a little bit of spacing here. Let's go down to the caption, which we don't notice because I selected the wrong box. Let's go ahead and click on there for our label. Now we should see caption here. Let's go ahead and click between the T and the I, add a space, and then go ahead and hit the tab button. And you can see to the left, the space was created there, and our label box now looks better. Now that we've got our caption fixed, let's go ahead and close our property sheet and save our work. And we will move on to modify a combo box in our design and layout views. So we'll click back over here and we'll look at our steps for modifying our combo box in design and layout views. And we'll go ahead and perform these steps now back in our database. Let's go ahead and click our patient ID combo box. Go ahead and hold your shift key down and select the label box that corresponds with patient ID. And we're going to go ahead, now that we've selected both, we're going to move them right above the patient ID controls. Don't worry about trying to align them. Let's just go ahead and drag our selected controls to a position right above visit ID. Alright, go ahead and release it. Now, so that we can deselect them, just click in any empty space here in our grid. You'll see the gray boxes go, or the orange boxes go away, so you know that they've been deselected. Next, we're going to hold the shift key while we click our patient ID label, the visit ID label. The date of visit label, the reason diagnosis label, and our comments label there. You should have all of those selected now. With those selected, let's go ahead and click on the Arrange tab here. From the Arrange tab, we are then going to go into the Sizing and Ordering group here at the end. Once you're there, you need to go ahead and select the Align button here, and then we're going to align all of that to the left. And once you click the left, you should see a little bit of realignment there. There may not have been much. If there wasn't much, that means we did a good job. Alright, so now that we've done that, we've made sure that those are all aligned to the left. We're going to repeat those steps 3 and 4 to align the patient ID combo box, the visit ID text box, the visit date text box, the reason text box, and the comments text box on their left edges as well. Let's go ahead and select those now. Patient ID, and remember to hold the shift key. Visit ID, visit date, the reason, and the comments text box. And then we go back up here, and we're going to align to their left edges. Not much change there. Next, let's select our walk-in label, our walk-in checkbox, our reason text box, and our comments text box. And we go back up here to our line, our sizing orders. We're going to select Align. And for this time, we are going to select Right. And you can see we did have a shift, or at least on mine, had a shift of those to align the right edges of those boxes together. Now that we've got our alignment correct there, let's go ahead and switch to our form view and take a look at that and click on the patient ID arrow to open the controls list box. So let's go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and switch to form view. And you can see we have our list box here. Now you'll note that the column is not wide enough to show the full data values. You compare that, even though we know ours is a little bit different because we had, at least on mine, I hadn't put in the last name or first name yet for student last name, student first name. But you can compare that with figure 628, which also shows that theirs is not as wide as it needs to be as well. So to make this change, instead of using the design view, we're going to switch to layout view and make our changes necessary for that. So let's go ahead and switch to layout view now. We're going to go to our second record. You can see that Weiss Jordan parent is not shown all here. So we'll go ahead and widen there using this record. So let's make sure we use the combo box only. So let's select that, and we'll use our sizing handle here as indicated by our arrows. And we'll just keep dragging it out a little bit. Now for mine, I would need to drag it out much further because of the student first name and student last name that wasn't changed. But since you've put your names in there, your record may not be the longest patient ID label. So I'll just go ahead and leave it at that, because what's important is that we know that we can see most of our records based on this one. And you can click through some of those just to get a good feel, but you can see that I did select mine long enough to be able to support the student last, student first, since for my purposes I didn't change it like you guys need to. Now to complete session 6.2, we're going to move into our last section, which is we're going to add a title to our form. Let's go ahead and look at those steps now. Now we're going to go ahead and add a title to our custom form in layout view. When you add the title to a form in layout view, Access will go ahead and add the form header section to the form, and it places the title in the form header section. But at the same time, Access will also add a page footer section of the form and set its height to 0. So let's go ahead and look at those steps now. And we'll get back into design view in our database and complete the steps to add our title. We will get out of layout view now and switch to design view. Actually, let's go ahead and go back into our layout view. Sorry about that. Here in our design tab, let's go ahead to our header footer group here, and let's click the title button. And you can see how that pops up in our header right away. And we're going to type visits and invoices to replace our default title that was created. And of course we're going to have spaces for our title. It should look like that once you get that put in. And that should match up with what is in figure 6-30 in your eText. Let's go ahead and select our title control. So click out that and then click on there. And let's go ahead and go to the Format tab. From there, we're going to go to the Font group, and then we're going to click Bold. Instantly, you see that bold was applied. If you picked italicize, you'll see it changes. Underline, you'll see the underline gets put there. But for our purposes, we only want the bold right now. And you can look at some of the other characteristics here that Access has created our title in an 18-point font using the Calibri Light font, 18-point font size with the Calibri Light font type. And bold is selected, and that is what our display is here. 18-point Calibri Light font in bold. Alright, let's go ahead and switch to our design view. And once we're in our design view, we're going to click outside the grid to deselect all of our controls. There are no orange boxes, so we know we've deselected them all. And let's go ahead and save our design changes. And note that our title has been created in the form header area, just like we expected, or the form header section of our layout. And everything, as you compare it, should look just like it does in Figure 6-31. Having completed that step, we have now completed session 6.2, and we'll be moving on to session 6.3.